Hey, you just landed on episode number 3 of a 4-part series focused on how we learn to do things of an artistically creative nature, and also how we teach others to use the creative gifts that they have been given. It is my honor to be here with Sydney West to talk about that very thing. If you didn't catch the first video, let me catch you up. Sydney is our middle child, which makes her pretty special to me, and she's also a musician and a professor of commercial music at a university. And we are talking through Sydney's 5-point philosophy of teaching and how each point plays out to develop the creative skills, talents, and abilities of others. Welcome back, and thanks for being here, Sydney.
Hey.
Okay, if you would like to know more about Sydney's background and to hear her thoughts on the other points in her philosophy concerning communication and collaboration, check out the other episodes of this series. I'll pop a card and a link in the description for a playlist of the videos right here on YouTube. And if you watch or listen on a different platform, you'll have to do a little bit of a search for it yourself. Sydney, let's get back to it. So your third point hits on the subject of technique. As we say on the channel all the time, whether we do something of an artistically creative nature or not, all of our creative output requires skills, talents, and abilities. The nuance of our use of those, in my mind, is technique. Is that what you're getting into with this point? What are some of the things that you have seen in teaching creative technique that impact creative output?
Yeah, so with this, I think it's important to start, as we kind of dive a little more specifically into what I teach, I think it's important to delineate between your classical musical arts and your more contemporary or commercial musical arts. And so I teach commercial music, which is heavily focused on commercial performance, music production, music editing, songwriting. It can be recording. It can be engraving. Which is kind of borders between your classical music arts and your or your more traditional musical arts and your more contemporary musical arts. But commercial music is all about commerce, right? You hear that in the first part of the word commercial, commerce. So the idea is you are making money selling a product, essentially. So as a performer, the product would be you and your performance of your music. As a songwriter, the product is your song. As a composer, again, it's your music that you're writing. As an audio engineer, your product is your ability to do the thing that you do, which would be for live sound reinforcement, actually, creating a good sounding space for, your more studio oriented engineers, which there are a variety. You're going to be more focused on your product is your ability to create a good mix, or if you're a mastering engineer, a good master. The output is consistent, right? That's your product. All of these things are what make commercial music distinct or separate from your more traditional musical arts, which would be your traditional instrument lessons, learning how to play an instrument, right? I don't teach those things. I don't teach how to play an instrument, but I do teach how to use music technologies and music software, which I like to think of as my instruments. I obviously play instruments as well, but really my main instrument is my voice, and then also being able to use software to create a commercially viable output or product, right? So technique, the way that I think of this, if I were a traditional music educator, I would be thinking the technique of teaching music theory, or the technique of teaching someone fingering on a guitar, or teaching someone how to sit with correct posture for playing piano, right? Those are techniques, playing styles, things like that. That directly relate to the output of the instrument, or the output of whatever that area of the arts is. It can also, be like opera as well. Those are your classical arts. Musical theater kind of borders the line between the two. But the technique there is, how do you present yourself with your instrument, or how do you best present your instrument? Whereas in commercial music, in the area that I'm in, technique relates to it does relate back to collaboration and how we're able to communicate with other people, how we actually can come up with essentially a business plan, which we'll talk about in a later point. But our ability to do those things, but really the technique that I focus on most is our ability to learn how to keep up with the changing times. Commercial music is ever evolving, especially with its heavy dependence on technologies, which we're also going to talk about. But with such a heavy dependence on that, what I try to focus on is techniques for being up to date with software changes, with technology changes, with what is the best. What's the best item to use? What's the best mic to use? What's the best interface, for my setup? How do I find this information? How do I go about maintaining kind of the standards of the industry, right? The consistency that the industry is looking for. So that is one thing. But when I talk about technique, I'm covering things like, how do I use my DAW, my digital audio workstation, like Pro Tools or Ableton or Logic or Cubase, right? I teach all of these, and how do I use that as a tool, right? You kind of mentioned this, that our tools, and the way that we use our tools, it becomes a technique. So not only can I keep up with my software that I'm using, can I keep up with all these things, but what is my workflow within a software? So I teach a course in Dorico Pro, which is a music notation or music engraving software. And think of it like combining together Photoshop with a music notation software with Microsoft Word, right? Being able to put all these things together, you can be highly detailed in what you're doing, or you can make some very simple sheet music output, right? So yes, you're thinking along the right lines of the music notes, and maybe you know how to read those, maybe you don't. But I teach a course in how to use this software, and one of the biggest things that I do in this course, and whenever I teach anybody a software, is not just teach them, what does it look like to use this mode or this screen or this window or this settings menu, right? I'm teaching them my workflow, right? My a standard set of operations that I go through when I sit down to do specific types of projects, right? So I sit down and I'm working on a lead sheet for a song, which is going to have your three basic elements: chords, lyrics, and melody, right? I sit down and I have templates that I use. I have specific orders of my workflow. I always start with notes, and then I move to chords, and then I move to lyrics, right? I know these things, and then I don't just give the order, but I actually give rationale, right? I give a good understanding of why I do these things, right? It's not just, this is what you should do, but this is how I got there, right? I think that technique so often, and whether you're in the digital arts, you're in visual arts, you're in whatever area of the arts, or in any area, like you're in business or you're in nursing, I think like I've mentioned, I've had students that are in those areas. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the endeavor to learn something is not just knowing that there's a way to do it, but knowing why that way to do it exists, or why it's the best way, or currently the most advanced way, or the most user-friendly way to do something, right? Whatever it kind of boils down to in your area or your field of expertise. But the understanding of why that technique works is so important for continued learning beyond a degree, or beyond a certification, or beyond sitting in a lesson with somebody. I think describing the framework is really what makes it stick for students. So when I say technique, it's not just, how do I use this software, or how do I use this mic, or how do I use this interface? It's, how do I use it, and why do I do it that way? and really diving into the why do I do it this way? How did I come to this conclusion? Not only allows students to learn more, but it also actually allows me to learn in the process of teaching, which is, it's something that is really major in my life is learning from my students in the process of teaching them, right? They might say something that sparks something in my mind of, maybe it's time for me to modify my workflow. And I do modify my workflows often. Not often enough that I don't remember them, but often enough that I'm keeping up with expectations of the industry, but I'm also modifying based on outside sources, right? Watching videos from other people, hearing my students talk about things, talking to colleagues and hearing what they're doing with the same software or with the same piece of equipment, right? Or the same, what's their setup look like and how does that work for them? It can boil down to simple things like, how did you build the desk that you use in your studio, right? Or something like that. Did you buy it somewhere, right? And those are important parts of workflow. And I think we skip past those things and we get into the deep nitty gritty stuff of, this is how you take this specific plugin and you do this specific thing and it creates a specific sound. And that can be very overwhelming if you don't start with the framework, or I like to think of it like the scaffolding that you need to be able to actually access the different areas as you create something, right? If without some sort of scaffolding to reach the roof of the Sistine Chapel, we wouldn't have the beautiful work of art that's there, right? So accessibility is all about the steps to get to something, and then also making those steps known and making them flexible if needed for different learning styles. I think it's really, really important to assess who's in the room, how they need to learn, and what they need to learn in that order, right? Who's in the room, how they need to learn, and then assessing what needs to be learned, right? And I think a lot of times we start with the what needs to be learned, and it's important to have that going in. But at the end of the day, I think starting with who I'm teaching is the most important thing to me. Otherwise, it becomes impersonal. And I don't like learning that way. I like for it to be a personal interaction with the person I'm learning from. I learn best in those settings. So that would be technique from the perspective of, I'm not in your more traditional technique heavy side of the music industry. But the commercial music industry does have workflows and patterns that are widely accepted and used. And I think it's important to teach those and the understanding of why we use those. And that generally does differentiate between the person that is, and there's nothing wrong with this, but a bedroom producer versus a producer that is active in the larger music industry, right? The difference is accepting and the ability to work within the standards that are in place versus the inability or just the lack of desire to do so. You don't have to work only in one facet of the music industry, but even if you want to be, your bedroom producer, knowing what the industry looks like is still important, because you can't say that you don't do something if you don't know what it is about in the first place. So yeah, that would be technique.
Yeah, for me, when I hear the word technique, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks this way. I think about if you're a guitarist, there's guitar techniques, and it's a certain thing you can do to be able to do a certain kind of musical thing, right? But I think so. I think a lot of people think that way, and yes, it from your perspective and what you teach, there is some of that. Like you're going to do X, Y, and Z to make this certain thing happen. And that is technique, learning how to, in music mixing, learning how to use compressor, learning how to EQ things, and it's no different than in any of the other artistic creative endeavors that we do, whether it's how to get the right look on with lighting in a video, or how to set up a storyline that makes the reader engage more, those kinds of things. But I think for the most part, in today's kind of creative economy, technique is cheat codes. So
Yeah.
everybody's out there on YouTube looking up a cheat code to be able to do something. So because not everybody, but there's a lot of people that just don't want to put the time in to approach technique in the way you're talking about it, which is learning
Yeah.
systems and processes to do the thing better each time, and iterations of better.
Yeah.
To your point, my Pro Tools template that I have for when I'm making music, I change that sucker anytime I learn something new. And to the point of, I've got more than one, and it's a whole process when I change something. And but it is kind of a part of the whole thing. We've communicated, we have collaborated, and now we're using the techniques that we have to do a thing. But if we're only ever thinking about technique as a cheat code, and we're going to find it on YouTube or social media somewhere, and it's going to miraculously do a thing, that is not technique. For me, technique is taking skills, talents, abilities, and learning from someone. And it can be on YouTube. Trust me, I look for the YouTube cheats as well, all the shortcuts. But to really have a technique that is developed, you have to put the time in, right?
Yeah.
And your students, I mean, they're kind of required to put the time in. You as a professor are required to put the time in to increase your creative technique in teaching, right? So technique and as the old saying is, you got to woodshed. You got to go out to the woodshed and where you're by yourself and apply the things that you've learned in a way that builds your technique so it's better. Now, obviously, we don't have a woodshed in the backyard, but the point is that we take those things that we've learned, whether it's by an educator like you or through some online source, and or in our own study of books and things like that. Books are a thing, right? You can read them and they teach you stuff. But we learn stuff, and then that process of learning new things builds technique.
Yeah.
And creative technique is a thing that doesn't just come. It requires that you learn things, that you hone those skills that you have.
Yeah, I think one of the best examples that I have of this would be when I learn a new software, which I think I'm fluent in 11 software, and I teach 7 of those. So when I'm in a software, all of my software that I teach, I've been self-taught in these software, and I don't do this from watching YouTube or not that I don't look things up. If I'm really stumped on something, absolutely, I'll go to another person as a resource, but I will dive into the software. I go through menus. I go through the key commands. Those shortcuts. I make notes. I have lists of key commands that I use for every software that I use. Now, the ones I use most commonly, I don't need the list. I just know them. It's just like learning, placement for different chord inversions on your instrument. I know key commands the same way, right? For my software. And if you are watching this and you are doing anything in the digital age of software, you know what I'm talking about. You can't really get away from knowing at least a few key commands. But the more that you know them, the more that you internalize the way that the software or the technology or the piece of equipment that you use operates. Not only does the workflow become easier, which is at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? That's why we watch these short videos and we try to get information quickly because we want to save time in a busy world. But what we lose in that process is the internalization or the instilling of habits within ourselves with that software or with that songwriting workflow or with that you have a template for writing or you have a template for working in Pro Tools, like you were talking about, or you have a template for creating edits for specific types of videos or films, right? And you start working in these personalized templates. I have students ask me all the time, "Do you have a Pro Tools template that you can share with me?" And I tell them, "I can show you how to make your own." And I do have templates I could share with them. Pro Tools, I'm a certified instructor in Pro Tools. I certify other people in the use of Pro Tools. And I get asked this question a lot of, can you share your personal template with me? And I could share my personal template with them. But instead of allowing for instant access to all of the work that I've done, what I like to do is walk them through the process of how they can, hopefully a little less time than I spent doing it all on my own, but with the assistance of someone else, walking them through the technique, they're able to create templates that actually work for their workflow. Instead of having to take my template, deconstruct parts that don't work for them and add new parts, they're able to go from an empty starting place and create a template that does what they need it to, right? Because their creative output is different than mine.
That's right.
At the end of the day, all of our creative outputs are different. Even when we collaborate with each other, right? Our needs on different stuff. Like I'm going to use Pro Tools and my template in Pro Tools, and it's going to be different than the post-production audio engineer that I'm working with on a film, right? He's going to have a different template than I have, or the editor, she's going to have a different template that she's using for maybe she's just importing directly into the editing software that she's using and not even using Pro Tools, right? So we're all using these different templates, but I think one of the things that can really help you to stand out technique-wise within a very overpopulated music industry currently is that we not only have a technique that we've learned, but that we develop our own techniques, our own workflows, because my brain works differently than your brain, right? I remember things in a different way than you remember things.
Yeah.
I do everything unscripted, like everything, and like all of my lectures are based on who's in the room. I obviously have points of contact that I come back to of like, all right, make sure I'm on the right track. I'm hitting these different points, but it's all based on who's in front of me. It's all based on the individuals that I'm interacting with. And that is how I work. Whereas someone else may script out every single thing in a lecture as they present something or in a lesson. And that's the only way that they can do that. And it doesn't make me more creative than them. It makes us creative in different ways.
Sure.
And if they were to share their PowerPoints with me, they would probably have it all scripted out, and I would share my PowerPoint and they'd be like, "But what do you say in between the points on the slide?" I say whatever is current, whatever is active, in my experience in the industry, right? So, there's a lot of different techniques and workflows, but I think the most important thing is internalizing those workflows and not just, oh, I've saved this video and I'll just watch it every time I need to do that thing. No, internalize that information, right? That's what sets us apart as professionals. If you truly, for what I do, I tell my students, if you truly want to be a part of the commercial music industry, you have to be a viable commerce option for someone, right? That you're making money from them hiring you, and then they hopefully in turn would make money off of that product as well, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, and to be the most viable option, which we can talk about more a little bit later on. You have to internalize technique. You have to know that you know what you're doing, and that will permeate. You don't have to tell somebody that you know what you're doing, but that just kind of permeates into your conversations, right? People will hear that you know what you know, and they're going to. Not only does that build a trust, but it builds respect, and respect is so essential for healthy collaboration and working with other people. So,
yeah, that's good. Our learned and honed creative technique, when focused on the use of our skills, talents, and abilities, is part of what makes our creative output uniquely our own. We can and should never stop studying and refining our technique. God created us in His image, and we should strive to better our creative output for no other reason but to bring him glory for the creative gifts that he's given us. So let's get out there and work on and use well our creative techniques as we go. Create and be a blessing. You can support our channel by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to get notified when new content comes out, and liking our videos. If you'd like to consider supporting our team financially, there's a link in the video description with more details. Those things will help our channel for sure, but if you do nothing else, please spend some time in the comments of our videos encouraging one another to create, to help others create, and to help grow that creative nature within us all. Oh, and you can check out these videos too. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.